Hi, hello, welcome to my Q&A podcast. My name is Ram Shingal, and this is basically just a podcast about people who ask me questions, and I try to answer them. But before I get into that, I just wanted to come around how I got to this podcast and basically who I am. Because I feel like if you guys are going to get mad at me for whatever I say, I should at least have a chance to defend myself, or at least give you a preemptive warning as to try not to hold it too heavily against me. As much as I wish I could be all right about everything, let's face it, I'm a human, and that too not a great one, so I'm bound to say something to piss someone off, even if I try not to. So the podcast came into conception about, about 3 days before this podcast was supposed to be put out, and I was not sure what I wanted to do. As it turned out, no one in the class had the capability or availability to partner with me, and they already had an idea of what they wanted to do. They had discussed it with other friends, and they had put it all together, and we're going to do video podcasts. And here I am sitting in a booth alone, wondering, man, they must be having a lot of fun. But that aside, this podcast was thrown together over the weekend, 3 days before it was due, and I had no idea. So what I did is I decided to do a questionnaire. And honestly, the first thought was, would the teacher even accept that? But, at this point I was grasping at straws. I didn't really have the choice to be picky. So what I did is I went around to people who I knew, classmates, friends, family, and I said, hey, if you could ask a question that you want my opinion on or my interpretation on or anything really, give me a question. And over the course of it, I got about 20 questions, and some were a little bit more wordy than others, and some were a little bit more squished together than others, and some people were tooting their own horn, and there was someone who asked me what the weather was, and I just threw that idea outright. The thing is, I don't think I'm personally very qualified to talk about it. I'm depressed. I've had a lot of trouble reconciling myself to living. I'm ignorant, stupid, impatient, and a whole myriad of other issues that if I were to try to talk about that, well, the 20 minutes that I've allotted for this podcast would be over in, a flash, and you would have learned nothing more than how much I absolutely hate myself. And I doubt that's what you really want to hear, unless you guys are into listening to some guy talk about how emo and depressed he is. Oh, by the way, I have a chronic depression, so, grant me some mercy. Anyway, so yeah, I gathered some questions, and I'm going to answer them to the best of my ability. And without a partner here to talk, you're going to be hearing this voice for 20 minutes straight. So if you have any problems with that, cut out now, please. So the first question I got was actually very difficult because, as I mentioned, I'm an ignoramus. It said, will social justice ever lose the extremity that it is now displaying? And when will it peter out if it ever does? So listening to this question, I decided, okay, I'm going to do a little bit of research into social justice just to see what I get as a bare bones definition. And the definition that I got was justice in the terms of distribution of wealth, opportunities, and privileges within a society. And so basically it's when people make a big ruckus about how women aren't being paid as much as men, or color plays a factor into being hired, and all those stereotypical stuff that people hate and really discuss. And the thing is, I'm not talking about what social justice is right now on the rise or anything like that, but will it ever lose the extremity? And I'm not going to make any assumptions and say, oh yeah, this will all just blow over. I personally believe that as long as society is around, social justice will exist in any way, shape, or form, because people will always look for a way to push their agenda. I could say one day that, maybe Indians are way too smart. They should all be given reduced wages or something. Or white people are the only people who can be trusted to do something or the other. If I'm trying to push my agenda, of course I'm going to be gathering people who think like I do, who want to protest as I do, and, put that all together. And frankly, as much as I hate stereotypical racism and all that, it exists. And as long as it does exist, it will exist for a long time. And it'll never peter out, is the point I was trying to make. The next question after that was, where do I see myself in 20 years? That was a difficult question, not because, I have actually it is a difficult question because I don't have a plan, and I'm depressed, and I'm borderline suicidal, and all those other mental issues that I decided to forewarn you about. I didn't know what I was going to do. And frankly, in 20 years, I don't actually know if I have the power to stay that long. I'm been doing pretty well trying to get to where I am now, and I'm already 21. Halfway there to 40, and that's just a number that's depressing to think about. I don't think I'll make it to 40. Hell, I'll probably end up in a ditch in, give me 8 years maybe at most. At most. At least, give me a couple of months. I'll probably work up the courage to do something really stupid then. The next question after that was, am I a dog or a cat person? Now, personally, I like animals. I was an animal buff back when I was a child. I loved animals, especially that iguana that shot blood out of its eye to literally blind its opponents. Certain irony there, but that aside, am I a dog or a cat person? I actually like both. I have 2 dogs. One's a Chihuahua, very, very sassy Chihuahua, and another is a Australian Retriever, and I also know my sister's cat, who loves me very much and is also great at cuddling, purrs all the time when I'm around. So, personally, I don't really have a preference. In fact, if anything, depending on how much effort and care you're willing to put in towards being a dog or a cat or a wolf or a turtle person, that's what's important, not whether I have a certain preference. If you have a preference, more power to you. It's not my place to judge, and I don't really think I'd want to even if I could. And it said, do you feel like you accomplished something today? That was the next question, and considering I'm doing this right now and I've already done like 5 drafts of this and none of them had really pleased me, and I completely forgot my intro in about the 3rd one, I guess I'm accomplishing something. I'm not sure if I've accomplished anything of matter today, but I'm trying my best, and really, this is pretty much my entire plan for the next, couple of hours, so yeah, I'll say I have accomplished something. I've accomplished getting this far in my podcast. Next question. What emotion do you feel the most? As I'm depressed, I can say depression is the most prevalent emotion, but there are times when I'm actually happier than normal, and that's usually when I'm doing something that I find enjoyable, like reading or writing. And, most of the time, though, I don't really feel one way or another about everything. I'm kind of ambivalent to the point of apathy, which is kind of depressing to think about because honestly, it's hard to bring up any real emotion about something when honestly, I'm just feeling tired of everything all the time. But that's neither here nor there, and I doubt you want to hear me whine about how depressed I am for any longer than you absolutely have to. Okay, so the next thing is, what is my favorite thing? Why is it that thing? What do you appreciate about it the most? And how does it make you feel? I'd say something that is really my favorite thing to do is just to read, relax, and write. Those are 3 things that just, when I'm doing them, I'm at the utmost amount of peace. That's what I feel. They make me relaxed, I can think, I get to plumb the depths of my own imagination when I'm writing and putting that down on a forum to post. It just makes me happy. That's when I really feel like I've accomplished something. Harkening back to question number 4, when I finish a chapter in a story I'm writing, I'm just proud. For that one instant where I post it, I smile and I think, I did that. I wrote that. Sure, it may not be the best. Sure, it may have a crap ton of grammatical errors. But hey, I tried. I did my best. And, really, what can anyone ask of anyone else other than doing their best? And reading, I like reading because I get to observe the world of someone's imagination. They offer up a world that you can get yourself immersed in, something that you can see, imagine, and just enjoy. And a lot of people seem to think that reading, it's a chore. And some people say they only read to do projects. And I find that just so sad that no one really takes the time to appreciate just how much someone put work into a written piece. I mean, sure, you have autobiographies and you have biographies and you have history texts, but one thing that should be realized about all those works is that someone put time into putting that together. And whether it's for your education or just for your enjoyment, a lot of people seem to demand that, oh, the story sucks, that we need to critique it, that it should do this and it should do that. Well, frankly, I just find that so disappointing. In fact, I had been on a writing forum once, and I was reading a story that I really enjoyed, and halfway through, the author deleted his account. And he said the reason he did that was because people were just criticizing his work and were begging for more and were just throwing all these opinions that he really didn't want to deal with. And I was so devastated by that. I was in the middle of a great story. I was really getting into it, and then bam, it's gone. So, there's a lot of purpose in writing and reading, and that's what relaxes me most about it, is just being able to see work done through another person's hands. I think that's what I enjoy most about the written word and why it's so good to read. It's just really nice. This one was a person who decided to toot his own horn, and he said, "Why is my video production professor one of the best professors that I've ever had?" And you know what? I will full and wholeheartedly agree that he is one of the best professors I've had. Not because I'm trying to get a good grade in this class. So if that's why you think I'm suddenly singing you praises, that is not true. I'm thinking this perpetually whenever I'm hearing you explain your lessons. This is not me brown nosing. Don't think I'm brown nosing. I'm not trying to get a good grade. Well, I am, but it's not for that reason that I'm being nice. But my video professor, Tim Allen, one of the reasons that I enjoy his teaching is because he's passionate. He really enjoys teaching kids, teaching us how to make a good production, a good video. And I will admit, when I initially took this class, I was not really sure if I would learn anything. I mean, I actually planned to be more on the front of the camera rather than behind it. But I can honestly say that there were a lot of aspects in this that I found very interesting when I actually started to really learn what went on behind the camera. How the framing is done, how audio quality is done, the different types of mics, the different positions in a video production. A lot of people don't think it, but there's a lot that goes on. And Tim, he knows it inside and out. And that knowledge that he's choosing to share with us, I really begin to express just how thankful I am that he's willing to do that. He loves his job and he really enjoys teaching. He makes the class fun, exciting. He lets us play around with equipment, let us learn how to do things. He's really helpful when we need it. He doesn't hesitate to offer up a hand. He's not trying to just let us muddle our way through alone. He's always willing to offer guidance, give us ideas, throw out an idea, and maybe help us trim down and really make the best possible production that we can. And I find that something that is just so admirable about him as a person and as a teacher and as an instructor. He's really a passionate teacher. There's no other way to say it. And really, I feel like that encompasses the core of this class: passion, innovation. He's just really great about being a teacher. He's really dedicated. If he's working hard, he's working hard trying to make us become better. And that's just one of the many, many reasons why I enjoy having Tim Allen as my video production teacher, because he works so hard and he works hard at making us work hard. And the next question is about a production that I'm actually going to be in, a stage production, not a video production, sadly, and not sadly, since I do enjoy theater, is how do I feel about playing in the play A Midsummer's Night's Dream? And I thought, I really enjoy it. A Midsummer's Night's Dream is a very comical play. Basically, it begins with drama and basically two guys arguing over a woman, and the woman wants to choose the guy who is not approved of. So they decide to run away. They end up in a forest with fairies. And then the fairy king, seeing the plight of one woman who is trying to get the attention of this guy, says, "Okay, I know what to do. I'll put love potion on their eyes." Unfortunately for them, the guy who was rejected is still chasing after the girl, and then there's a girl chasing after him. Problem is, the guy who he sent to put the love potion kind of anointed the wrong eyes, and the next thing you know, two guys are fighting over one girl, and the girl who was initially in love, well, let's just say it got really complicated. But that's just the bare bones script. If you really want a review, go watch the play. Trust me, you'll enjoy it. I enjoyed it, and that was me watching it the first time around. Anyway, the reason I enjoy theater is because it's a chance to experiment with characters. The character I'm being played as is pretty much egotistical, but he's really passionate about what he does. Problem is, he is having a lot of trouble getting all of the people he has under his control to really work together. He has a lot of egos to deal with. He has difficulty getting the practice together. And basically, by the time everything does come together, oh my God, it is practically a disaster. But it's so bad that it's good. And again, if you want to know what I'm talking about, go watch the play itself. It really is an enjoyable play. I've seen it done on stage back when it was produced by my sister. And I actually got the same role as her, oddly enough. So I guess I'm following in the footsteps pretty well. And the next one was actually a question asked to me by someone. And she said, "Why do I feel so underappreciated by people?" I know this person, and frankly, I don't underappreciate her. I don't think a lot of people do. But she feels that way, and it brought me to a kind of difficult moral dilemma. I can't express what you feel. I can't, give you an objective point of view while retaining my viewpoint. I can't put myself in your shoes. I don't understand what you're going through because you're the person going through it, and I'm just a person who's observing what's going on. And I didn't even know you felt underappreciated until you had told me and you had asked me this question. And the best thing I can say to you in response to that is I don't think you're underappreciated. I really don't. I know for a fact that I appreciate the work you do, the time and effort you put into your work and your craft. And frankly, I'm really thankful that you're working so hard to make things right and to do your best. So if there's one thing you really want to know, and if there's one thing that I can say in response to you wanting to know that, is that I don't feel that you're underappreciated. I personally don't underappreciate you, and I'm really sorry you feel that way, and I wish I could help, but I can't do anything more than tell you that I appreciate you. And I'm sorry if that's not what you want to hear, and I'm sorry if it doesn't make it any better, but that's really the only thing I can say. So the next question was one that I actually found personally enjoyable, was what are your top 3 favorite books, and why? Describe them. Now, I read a lot of books. I think I've mentioned that. So I decided to do 3 book series, and one is the novelization of Star Wars as my favorite all time. The second is the Percy Jackson series, the entirety of it. And my third favorite book series was the Harry Potter series. Yeah, I know, it's cliche, it's generic, and it's been done way too much, but hey, this is my list, not yours. Deal with it. I'd put on sunglasses, but I don't have any, and I doubt you'd be able to see it, seeing as this is not a video podcast. Anyway, so why I enjoy those series is, for one thing, when I saw Star Wars the first time, I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the plot, I enjoyed the concept, and let's face it, we all wanted a lightsaber when we were little. We all did. We all wanted to jump around and lift things with our minds and fight evil people with laser swords. That's really all it is. And however, as I kept on watching, I really enjoyed it. I really thought that, wow, this is really cool. They put a lot of thought into this work and into this world. However, the novelization, I'm on par with saying that it's better than the movies. Well, I'd like to think that it's on par with the movies because, let's face it, nostalgia factor, that plays a huge part into the movies. And in the books, I like reading them because there's a lot more you can actually do with a book than you can do with a video. I mean, yeah, with today's day and age, you can all do the CGI and whatnot, but back then, a lot of the time it was based on actor movements, what they could do with their bodies, and with the meager effects of their time. And in a book, you can actually read those so well, and you can really put a lot more action, a lot more depth, a lot more emotion into books than you can ever do a movie. I mean, Percy Jackson movie, I'm sorry to say, you just did not measure up to the hype of the book. I'm sorry to say it, I'm so sorry to say it, but I have to be honest. And yeah, Anakin Skywalker is kind of an idiot in his movies. I will not begrudge him that. But, again, in the book, I just think they did it a lot better. And that's why I like the novelization of Star Wars. There was so much more depth and effort put into it. For the Percy Jackson series, it actually started me on my Greek mythology kick. I did not know a lot about Greek mythology. I had a vested interest in it back in elementary school. And then I read the Percy Jackson series, and I'm like, whoa, look at all these characters. Look at all these different gods that play a part in this really amazing story that I'm reading. And I started to research into it a bit. I started to look, wow, look at this. This is Zeus, king of the gods, and apparently he's more powerful than everyone. And Poseidon, Hera, Hades, the different interpretations, whether he's an Olympian or not. And I actually really started looking into Greek mythology, something that really interested me. And after a while, it did kind of peter out, but loving the books never did. I always constantly am rereading Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief, or The Last Hero, or The Blood of Olympus, all that, because those are really well put together stories and I enjoy reading them. And I know the reasons are starting to sound incredibly similar, and I've only gone through two, but really that's the way I look at books. I enjoy the way they're put together, and that's why I enjoy them. The same can be said for Harry Potter. The characters were great, the storyline was compelling, and frankly, I just liked the concept. I mean, we all wish we could use magic. Heck, if we did have magic, man, life would be so much easier. We could conjure water out of thin air and all this other stuff that I really don't want to get into because if I do, I'll be here all week. But yeah, I enjoy the series because it was well put together. The characters are compelling. It's really impressive to make us empathize with the character to the point that we don't want to lose them. And my next question was, do you feel like you're living your best life? This is a very difficult question. Not because I don't feel like I've not done the best I can, but because if I want to be honest, I don't think I am. I've squandered so many opportunities being the person I am, doing what I can, living the life I've lived. I honestly feel like I've not been living to the fullest of my potential, and it's really disheartening to think about that. I actually, when I got this question, I just stared for a moment because going through my life, piece by piece, turning it over, looking at each and every facet of my existence and my memories, I realized there's so many things I could have done better. There's so many things I regret. Even if I don't want to regret them, even if I can't go back and change them, I really, really wish that I'd just done better. And that's so difficult to reconcile. We always have regrets. It's just part of being human, things that we could have done better. And I don't think many of us like to face that. It's hard to do. And thinking on this question, have I lived my life and am I currently living to the fullest? I don't think I am. It's hard to look at that and face that and think about that. And it's really just a question that I think you can only answer it when you've really hit your end and you're lying on your deathbed and you think back. Did you really do the best you can? Did you really try your best? And so far, it's hard for me to say I haven't, but that's the truth. My next question was, what values do you abide by most in your life? And this one was actually rather easy for me. It was live and let live. I don't want to have problems with people. I don't want to cause people issues. I don't want to make people angry. I don't want people to hate me for basically my opinion. And, regardless of whatever I do, I know people will dislike what I think. People will hate me for something I've said. In the beginning of this podcast, I addressed it. Please try not to hate me. And this is just my opinion. You don't have to agree. You don't have to disagree. You don't even have to have an opinion on what I'm saying. But if you do, try to be respectful about it. I only like constructive criticism on this, and I really don't want you to feel like I'm attacking your beliefs or that I'm trying to, push something onto you. That's just why I like live and let live. Because that way you get to respect other people, and therefore you also get to live your own life. You don't have to bend and conform yourself to someone else's beliefs or someone else's wants, You're not someone else trying to live vicariously through you. You're yourself, and that's all you need to be. My next question was, am I particularly religious? And if I am not, how do I feel about religion? Religion's a very complex subject in and of itself. Even if it wasn't putting my own personal spin, there are a lot of religions out there. And I don't want to bash any religion or anything like that. At one time, I was actually a Hindu. And after a while, I didn't think it fit me quite so well. I started to chafe under the belief system that it had. I will admit that it has very good points. And that's actually was a tie-in to the question previous. They have live and let live. In not quite the same sense, but that was the general gist. They respect all religions. And therefore, I feel like I should take that and apply that to this question. I respect all religions. Sure, some of them may seem a bit silly, some of them may seem a bit weird, but at the same time, they think the same way about us, maybe. And, they're entitled to their opinions, and I feel like I should be entitled to mine. I don't hate anyone. I don't want to hate anyone, and The same applies for religion. You do you. In the most simplest words, you do you, I'll do me, the world keeps on spinning, life is good. Or at least tolerable. And I got again what is one of the most relaxing things you do when you have free time. But I think I've explained that pretty succinctly in the whole what's my favorite thing. And that was reading and writing. If you want to go and rehear that again, well, you can just rewind this video to a certain part. I'm sure you'll find it sooner or later. The next one was, what do you feel is your biggest weakness in life? And that was a very loaded question because I have a plethora of weaknesses. But I think the biggest one I have stems from my depression, and that's my lack of motivation. It's hard to motivate me to do anything. Objectively speaking, people say I'm pretty smart, but only when I apply myself. And the problem is I have a difficulty in applying myself to anything because half the time I feel, what's the point? Why should I try? I mean, we're all inevitably hurtling towards the end of our lives. And, there's something to be said about what we manage to cram into those years, before the end comes that makes our life worth it. But at the same time, with my depression, I always feel like I'm never worth it. That no matter what I say, no matter what I do, it's never going to matter. And that kind of breaks down my motivation to do anything. And I feel that's my biggest weakness because that makes me lack passion. And passion is what you need to get through life. If you want to succeed or even make anything of yourself, if you even want to be content, you have to be passionate. You have to want it. You have to try. And motivation is the driving force behind passion and effort. And without motivation, you start to crumble. And that just makes it so, so hard to get through life. You don't want to try, and that sucks. And then the next question I got was, who would you say is one of the most important people in your life? And this is generic and cliche, and I know all of it, but I'd have to say it's my mother. And it's hard to say, but I think I appreciate her more than I do anyone else in my entire life. My mom is quite literally someone who I honestly can't imagine my life without. I don't know who I would have become, and all I know is that I would have been very greatly diminished without her guiding hand in my life. And if she ever comes across this podcast, I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much for raising me with love and dedication and teaching me right and wrong and being able to accept me for all the flaws that I have and all the flaws I've gained and for all the things I've grown up past and all the things I've risen above. Thank you, Mom. I honestly can't imagine how difficult raising me was because I wasn't a model person and I still am not, but I just want you to know that you matter so much to me. And honestly, you are the most important person in my entire life. And I love you so very much. The next question after that was, what is one of your favorite sayings? And one that I actually wholeheartedly believe in is the more that we learn, the more we have yet to know. And I think that's really important to realize that it's impossible to know everything in the world. And yeah, there are people who know more, and there are geniuses who have that intuitive leap, who are smarter and better. But the one true essence, I think, of life is there will always be something else to learn. No matter how high of a level you get, there's always going to be that step above that. Perfection is the impossibility that we will try to reach, but will never achieve. And personally, I think that's actually a great thing because if we can't ever reach perfection, that always means there's room to grow. We can be really, really, really amazing people, but we'll never be perfect. And that's a curse as much of it as a blessing. And frankly, it's kind of comforting to know, despite the fact that I'm kind of the low tier of a person, that I can still get better. I just have to try. And someone else asked me, what do you say is a problem with the world that can't be fixed? And there are a lot. I could go all week about problems that can't be fixed. Prejudice, bias, racism, hate. There's so many things in this world that exist simply because it's part of human nature. Humans are quarrelsome. They will always fight, they'll always argue, and they'll always be at each other's throats about one thing or the other. And that, I think, is the biggest problem, that we will never be able to achieve true peace. Because I think peace is the voice of reason. And you can't really achieve peace because we'll always be fighting. And yeah, I mean, that's not a really great explanation and may sound poignant and may sound downright stupid, but we'll always fight and we'll always argue and quarrel, and that's just human nature. And I find that sad that we can't ever move past that. We'll never be able to. Personally, I believe. We'll never be able to have that peace. And the final question was, are people's lives equal in worth? That was a very difficult question. And I think of all of them, it may have been the hardest on this entire list. Because everybody likes the ideal that everybody's life is sacred. Life is sacred. When you say that, that also opens up, what about animals? What about plant life? Is it fair that we chop down wood to make paper? Is it fair that when we feed chickens growth hormones to the point of where they're literally collapsing, unable to breathe under their own weight? If every life is sacred, how can we so willingly torture other life forms based on our needs? Do we matter so much more than them that we're willing to cast them aside? And when it comes down to people, is someone who's terrible, a murderer or a rapist or someone like that, are their lives worth less than a good person's? And if all life is sacred, doesn't that mean it's all equal? No, and yes, and I understand every facet of that discussion, but it's just a question that's so much bigger than me. Heck, this question could have been the basis for this entire podcast. And even if I had hours and hours and hours to talk about it, you really can't ever be sure. You really can't ever come to a satisfying conclusion on that answer. Maybe some people will, but that's based on them. But with me, I've always felt that it's hard to initially grasp that concept and then put it into a term that I can find myself satisfied with. And maybe that's my personal weakness, and maybe I'll never be able to reconcile it, but I'd like to think that maybe one day I'll find an answer, and one day I'll find an answer I'll be satisfied with. Well, looking at the time, it seems that my time of talking has come to a close. I've enjoyed doing this podcast, and frankly, it went on longer than I thought, which is always good, but I think I've really covered some points that I found important. And yeah, I know some of this is a bit rambling, and some of this is a bit inane, and some of it is cliche, but I think I've said my piece, and I'm quite satisfied with that. Thank you for tuning into this podcast. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to listen to me talk. And I hope you all have a good day after you're done listening. And Tim, I really meant everything I said.